Thank you, everyone. A real privilege to be here. I feel perhaps I'm the only one in the room who hasn't been coming for 25 years, and it's a great pleasure, and I'm sorry to realize what I've been missing. So I'm going to reverse what Roger just did. He said he was going to take you away from the conceptual to the practical, and with a health warning right up front, I'm going to take you back to the conceptual. And it's a deep dive on one of the methods, but it's one of a number of methods in parallel. You'll see the geospatial planning and other work going on concurrently. I'm going to take you to look at the system mapping element of this. I can really stand there. So this is Malden on the Blackwater, and you'll be able to see, I mean, this is your territory rather than mine in terms of the interconnected nature of the systems at play here. There's a local economy, there's tourism, there's flooding, there's a tidal regime, there's the biodiversity, and there's oyster farming in the area as well. So how do we plan in a way that reflects all of those? Well, over the last 5 years, my team has been working on participatory system mapping, and the definition of which, provided by Pete Barbrook and Alex Penn, is maps are causal models of a system represented by a network of factors and their causal relations. Basically, what that means is we can put anything onto a map so long as it goes up and down and is connected with other things, which is very helpful because that's actually how people think about their system. People don't think in strict categories. People think and understand systems with that plurality. And there's a number of different projects that I'll be drawing on just now. So, what does it look like? Well, this is the Blackwater and Colne project, and you can see here we start out by working out what is the scope of the map, and we've got the kind of urban planning and infrastructure, coastal communities, freshwater, estuaries, coastal processes, and so on. Now, the interesting thing here is each one of these represents a community of people who really know their stuff. And so what we want to be doing, and you'll hear me say this throughout, is we want to be taking people on a journey where they can talk about their bit and then learn to see the whole system in the context of everyone's bits. And on that basis, I mean, co-learning is the technical term for that. So I really want to emphasize this is a people process and a learning exercise as well as an analytical process. If we were to we then start by asking each of those groups to represent their bit of the system. And here is the agricultural, the upstream rural land use system. And you can see we haven't gone into a great deal of detail here, but actually when we start to look at the interconnections, even by having these small pieces, then we are able to kind of draw out real knowledge in this regard. That's the shock horror, that's the plate of spaghetti, or the horrendogram as it's known. It's no use whatsoever until you start to filter it. So what I find is a lot of people are very much, nearly everyone enjoys making a participatory system map because their voice gets heard. Very, very few people I've come across have ever read one of these things. So what really matters is what you do with it next, and we can filter this with respect to flooding, but still, we've got to go further, and we've got to draw out the hotspots. For example, this hotspot on the coastal realignment. And on this, you can see, you know, this map represents really detailed conversations about the impacts of coastal realignment. You've got the freshwater biodiversity and the estuarine biodiversity have to have that interaction. The assemblages of species really matters. And in all of this, you've got to be working out how do you work with the upstream people and the downstream people. And you can see as we have these conversations, not only do people go on that journey, but it also gets recorded so that when you have other conversations and you link back to the map here, you can see it's connected. I'm going to jump onto this is the ooze washes, 30 kilometers of 3 parallel rivers and a washland between them. In this map, we had, it was about the interaction between kind of the biodiversity and agriculture and flooding and estuarine action. And you can see that what we've done is, again, we've got a high-level map that we've shown a bit of, but then we were able to use it in terms of saying, for each river, what are the cascading impacts when you get above a certain threshold or below a certain threshold? So having this and being able to kind of look at it in each river was really, really useful in developing the water level management plan because we could be sure that everything had been taken into account. And as I said, people don't read these maps, but what they do is read the documents or the infographics that you produce based on them, and the map has gone back under the bonnet, and it really matters that it's there. Another project, Changing Coast East Riding. This is an area of very significant coastal erosion with a lot of competing pressures on the landscape, and you can see we've done something very similar. Again, starting high level, bringing people in, and then kind of joining the process up. And in this case, what really mattered was the metrics. And we've got lots of different types of metrics, and you can filter the metric by, is it a carbon or a socioeconomic or whatever, and you say what's measured proportionately, what's measured disproportionately, who has responsibility for what, or you could filter it on what's the provenance of the metric, and you find, well, actually, we're relying on citizen science in one area, but we've got kind of statutory bodies collecting data in another area, and unless you go through this process, you may not pick up on some of those, or you won't pick up on the second order impacts of what's happening in the system. I need to jump through. In London, this one was quite relevant. This is the really significant on that people journey. So we did a systems work at the beginning, then we moved to a numerical integrated modeling, and then we did the collaborative planning. But the key in all of this, with the steering group, where we had busy people from different boroughs being asked questions about water in other boroughs across water resources and flooding and so on, they need to say, well, why should I work upstream or downstream? But by going on this process, it became, hey, my day job, as busy as it is, might be easier if I did work with people upstream and downstream. And that is a very significant cultural shift which took place. And as a result, there was a very effective immediate implementation, a 90-day action plan, as well as a longer-term piece of work. So it's that process of going on a journey that really, really matters with this kind of work. And the GLA said it was game-changing in terms of providing that evidence base. Back to the Colne, just to say, we then turn it round for a planning map like this, and we can show responsibilities of different interventions. We can show here, for example, is the Essex Water Plan. This is how it interacts with the local nature strategy. And as you move on, you've got all of this ownership and mutual responsibility has been created through this. Like I say, it has to be part of another piece of work which does the spatial mapping and so on. One very interesting project we did was understanding the why, and this is the plan on the why, where you can see you've got upstream livestock, which we are aware is largely poultry, and you've got downstream, you've got the builders, and this is across a border. And we went through this process, and these are the metrics they're now working with. And they said that, then we've gone on and done the numerical modeling, and by doing the conceptual work first, you refine the exam question for the numerical analysis or the cost-benefit analysis and so on. And you can end up with a plan like this, where you've got those metrics which are now being worked with. And the nice thing was that came out of this was that they said you took us from the storming phase to the norming phase. And if you're familiar with the catchment, then you'll take that and as you can see, tell everyone about it. So just to conclude then, in terms of what are the advantages of using a participatory mapping approach, and the key kind of exam question is how do we improve the quality of place-based decision-making? So I put forward these things. Firstly, it's a valid wide-angle lens on a complex multi-stakeholder problem that allows better targeting of detailed analysis. It creates a genuine representative of diverse perspectives, and within that, it's a people process as well as an analytical process. As I said, it's co-learning. People understand each other and the constraints they work with. And I think very significant in this point, jumping on to the next point about the engagement, is minority voices get a fair representation. Because the thing that people have said, for example, the assemblages, it may have been a minority ornithological voice in a larger planning process that has put that in there, but then it's on the map and it comes up in other discussions with developers and so on. And there may be a penny dropping kind of moment, but it's there and it kind of lasts. It creates an audit trail that shows how people have been consulted, and it's an assurance process to show that you've taken, you're covering all angles. In terms of the use cases, it's a coordinated planning, blended funding, monitoring evaluation. You can put the metrics on together and then use that throughout the duration of the project. Climate resilience, interdependencies, responsibilities, policy and planning coherence. So, yeah, thank you.